Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Nona from thealliancelover.com. I have the first video in the Men's Rising or Ascendant Facial Analysis series, and of course we're starting with Aries. Again, this is just for fun, take it with a grain of salt. I am working with a limited data pool, so if it's not resonating with you, totally understandable. Also, this is separated by decans. So if you don't know your decan, go into a natal chart calculator, look at the degree of your ascendant or rising sign, and if it's 0 to 9.99 degrees, that's first decan. Second decan is 10 to 19.99, and third decan is 20 to 29.99. So I just separate this into decans so I can, get into a little bit more nuance or subtlety as, this sign progresses through 30 degrees. So overall, we're looking at a very Martian influenced man. Mars is cutting, it's concise, it's effective, it's direct, it's aggressive. So these men look highly defined. There's a lot of sharpness, angularity, linearity to their face, a lot of boldness, and their eyes give off a very direct look. It's not the most, absent or dreamy or soft look. It's a bit in your face at times, or at least it can be. So let's begin and start looking at Decan 1. So here we have 4 men who fall under the first decan of Aries Rising, and what I noticed they have in common from the top to the bottom of their face, they have a more wide forehead. It's a bit flat at the top, so I guess you could call it a bit of a rectangular forehead. There's not too much roundness or longness in the forehead. Their eyes have a bit of a downturned angle at the outer third, or the outer half of the eye. It goes downwards, and there tends to be a sense of hoodedness, or at least the eyelid gets really thin here, so it further emphasizes that downward angle. The spacing is moderate to slightly closer together. The eyebrows are not super defined. They're not super bold or heavy. Kind of just sit a bit lower. They're not like all the way up here, but they're not like super thick and heavy. They're semi-thick, moderate. So from there, the nose bridge is a bit straight, a bit shorter. They don't have the longest noses. The nose tip tends to be a bit rectangular. By that I mean you can kind of imagine a cube or kind of a squoval, square, a little rectangle being drawn onto the tip of the nose, as opposed to like a very round tip nose like I have. My nose, you can like draw a ball on the tip of the nose. On theirs, there's a sense of angularity to that region of their face. Their top lip, very well defined. It's like you could draw 2 little triangles there. The bottom lip is not super fleshy. It kind of stretches lengthwise. That's where the shape of the mouth goes. It's more lengthwise than it is like open and full. Their jaw is pretty well defined, but you see a lot of definition in the chin, a longer, more square or blunt chin. Oh, and their cheekbones are not super defined. They're higher, but you're not really seeing the bone jutting out. So let's just take a quick look at these individuals. So we have Big Sean again with the eyes, the nose, short bridge, rectangular tip. You can't really see his cheekbones, but they're definitely there. They're not like sallow or weak. They're just not super visible, and the skin is quite taut, but it's not hollow. well-defined jaw, strong chin, very strong lip shape, and there's a sense of compactness to his face. There's nothing really curvaceous or excessive about his face. Everything is there for a reason. It's a very effective use of space. Next up, we have Jeremy Renner. He has this super pronounced kind of eyes that I was talking about, very thin eyelids, downturned, shorter nose bridge here, bigger, more rectangular nose tip. Again, with the cheekbones, you can't really see them, but they're well structured, sharp, strong jaw, blunt chin, kind of elongated bottom lip, and pronounced upper lip. Next, we have Gaspard Ulliel. I hope I said that right. I always talk about him, and I never remember if I say his name correctly, but here he is. I always remember him from this dog bite he had. I was kind of obsessed with him, and Hannibal Rising, that movie. But anyways, he looks a little softer. I see a lot of Sagittarius in him, but that's beyond the point. Again, the thin eyelids. His forehead seems a little bit longer because of his overall face and the hair, but if you just isolate the forehead, again, you have that flat top of the forehead, and it's kind of moderate and short and a bit wider. The cheekbones, nothing is jutting out. Taut cheek skin, the strong tip of the nose, the very pronounced upper lip, the more stretched out bottom lip, and the very strong chin. And lastly, for this deacon, we have Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Very strong case of the eyes. Again, the flat top forehead, kind of wide, it's moderate, not the biggest, not the shortest forehead. Cheekbones are there, they're not super distinctive, quite taut cheek flesh, shorter nose bridge, a rectangular nose tip, the mouth is there, kind of stretched bottom lip, and the jutting out strong chin. So now we have our second decan of Aries Rising men. So we're seeing a lengthening and a curving of the forehead. It's getting a bit more contoured, a bit wider, a bit more pronounced of a forehead, and not as rectangular and clean cut as the first decan. The eyebrows are longer, they're stronger. The eyes are becoming a bit more elongated. We still have the heavy kind of brow bone and thin eyelids that create this downturn, but we have the sense of it being stretched out horizontally, and a bit of an almond shape is kind of being formed. So we're getting elongation in the inner corners. The nose bridge, still a bit short. It's not the longest nose bridge, but it's just a bit thinner, more well-defined, a bit more raised, a little bit more contouring. So it's not as blunt as the first decan nose bridge. The nose tip, not as rectangular as you can see in all of these men. Their nose tip is a bit more round. There's just a bit more softness and volume in the nose tip. And with the cheeks, we're getting a lot more cheek definition. So we're getting a bit more hollow in the cheekbone here, and then more lift up here. So it's just a lot more prominent, with the lip not as sharp. It's a bit more round, it's a bit more full, and the bottom lip gets a lot more volume, and then the jaw kind of retains the same length as the first decan, but it's not as chiseled and it's not as blunt and jutting out. So our first example, Chris Rock, forehead not as flat. There's a bit more contour, there's a bit more height to it. It's not as clean cut. Longer, heavier eyebrows, more elongated inner corner of the eye, a longer eye overall. It's less of a steep kind of angle on him, at least. The cheekbones, they're rounder, more pronounced. You can definitely see more cheekbone definition, a bit more raised of the bridge, the rounder nose tip, and the much more full, round lip shape. And yes, he has a strong chin, but it's not as crisp and exaggerated as the first deacon. There's just a sense of it being a bit more gradual and integrated. Next up, we have James Dean, more exaggerated forehead. It's just higher and wider, just a bit more round at the top. It's not as flat. Heavier, longer eyebrows, more elongated, but still downturned eyes, thinner nose bridge, more subtle, rounder, less angular nose tip, higher cheekbone. You see a lot more definition, much more full, soft, rounded lip shape, and a more gentle but still strong chin. Next up, Sammy Davis Jr., again with a forehead, same thing going on. Longer, heavier, stronger eyebrows, more almond-shaped eyes, higher nose bridge, more rounded nose tip. He's smiling here, but you can see in a lot of his pictures that his cheeks here are more defined in the same way that James Dean's were. Rounder lips, just a more gentle but strong chin. And finally, we have the late Heath Ledger. Forehead is just more shapely. His eyebrows not as strong and long as the other ones, but still has quite the eyebrow shape. The very downturned eyes, but they're just a bit more elongated. The more slim and raised nose bridge. The cheekbones, again, much more defined than the first deacon, the rounder nose tip, and the more gentle, rounded lip shape. It's not as clear cut, and the more gentle, but still strong jaw and chin. And finally, we have our third deacon of Aries Rising men. So what I've noticed here is their forehead is very pronounced, and their eyebrows are not as heavy. They're just a bit more subtle. There's a lot less definition and weight in their eyebrows. Their eyes are still slightly downturned, but they're just rounder overall. There's a lot less angularity, and they're just a bit smaller. Their nose bridge is quite short. I think the slimmest of all the deacons. And then their nose tip has a more concise, slightly rounded tip. So it's like it's been pinched just a little bit. Their cheekbones not defined. They have a lot of weight in the lower third of the face, and I would say their lips are kind of a mix of the first and second deacon. We have a little bit of definition, a little bit of fullness, at least relative fullness, and then the chin has weight, but it's not as bulky as the first two deacons. So here we have Shaquille O'Neal. Again, the forehead is just the most prominent of this whole sign. The eyebrows are much more gentle. The eyes are more gentle, more rounded, still downturned at the corners, but a lot less sharp. And in your face, very short nose bridge, very rounded, more pinched off nose tip. Not very well-defined cheeks, and a lot of mass at the lower half of the face with a more gentle kind of mouth shape. There's nothing very angular. That being said, I don't think you would really call Shaquille O'Neal's face feminine or gentle. Well, he looks like a gentle giant, but I wouldn't say that his face is very delicate or dainty. Just relative to the first two, there's just a lot less sharpness, but overall we still have a very masculine face. Next up, we have David Spade, bigger forehead, lighter eyebrows, downturned eyes that are just more gentle and rounder, short nose bridge, pinched off nose tip, not very well defined cheekbones, but they're there, and just a lot of emphasis in the lower half of the face. Next up, we have Oscar de la Hoya. His forehead has like an exaggerated flat line here, and then this interesting curve there. Yes, he has thick eyebrows, but they're not super heavy. There's a bit of a lift to them. The gentle but still downturned eyes. The slim nose bridge. His is a bit longer, but he has a very pinched nose tip. The very subtle shape of the lip, and then so much mass at the lower half of the face. And lastly, we have Scott Caan. I know I cut off his forehead here, but it's basically a lot like Oscar de la Hoya's, where you have that interesting little curve here and then just a bit more height. Very light eyebrows relative to the other Aries Rising, but they're very prominent. There's a very definite shape to his eyebrows. He has that Aries glyph. If you can like imagine the Aries ram symbol, you can see it so explicitly in his face, downturned but rounded eyes, raised slim nose bridge, pinched nose tip, a lot of mass, lower face, and the subtle kind of lip. I know I mentioned fuller lip, and I meant relative. So overall, his bottom lip and his top lip don't have too much difference. So I guess I meant to say more equal, more balanced lip flesh instead of saying more full. So I misspoke. So those are the little observations that I've noticed with this group of Aries rising men. I think if you just take a look or a step back, what you can see is that there is this kind of playful intensity in their face. Like they're just gonna look you straight in the eye, but also there's this like boyish sense of fun and lightheartedness and playfulness and mischievousness to them. It's a very, very Aries. So I will see you in the next video where I look at Taurus rising men. Bye.